I shouldn't say that. I'm turning off the news, 'cause I don't believe it. I'm fixing things.
Well, hi, everybody. Hi, Barbara. You're here early. First in line, first to comment, Barbara Tichy. Hey, it's Hank Linderman here at Getting Angry. Welcome to Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. So it's 10/20/2020. Wow, that's pretty cool. And we're getting a nice look at the other view of the lake. Oh, can you hear the Canadians? It's the Canadian geese. Look how peaceful that is out there. But it is turning into fall and to winter. Mary Richardson's here. Bill McNichol is here. Hey, everybody. Do us a favor and share. Help us make a difference in the world. Boy, I just can't get enough of that view. I think I'll just do this. I'll look at it for just a moment. So peaceful, so nice. Kentucky is such a beautiful, beautiful state. And especially out here in Falls of Rough. Oh, listen to that. Well, I hate to cut away from it, but we got things to do. We got things to accomplish. How are you all doing? What a funny, funny year. We keep saying that over and over again, but you know, you can't make this stuff up. Yesterday, I had quite a time. I drove to Bullitt County and was able to be part of an event there that featured Amy McGrath, and I spoke to the crowd. It was a really great thing. Looks like tomorrow night I'm going to be in Jefferson County, even though that's not part of the 2nd District. I want to go up there because it's a Teamsters event, and as you know, I'm supported by the Teamsters and by the UAW. So I'm looking for some fellowship tomorrow. And then Thursday, there's an event in Meade County, or in Breck County, at the Breck. And in fact, Hildegard, if you're listening, if you could post the info about that in case someone wants to show up, we'd love to have you show up. And yeah, all right. Alexandra Thomas is here. I'm so glad you're here, Sandy. Everybody knows to share. Well, let's do some more talking. Let's talk about the numbers that we need to look at. And I guess our first one, as we're saying, let's have a look at this. You know, actually, I'm going to go back here. Let's see. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. So here we go. These are our terrible numbers. Now look at that number of total deaths in the United States. We are over 225,000 deaths, 225,222, 442 new deaths today. Hi, Brenda Richardson. I'm glad you're here. Oh, look at everybody who's here. Jenica is here. Mary, Billy, Cindy is here. Okay, I'm glad you all are here. The bad news is that we remain number one in the world in terms of total cases, even though our population is, 331,560,000. Look at the nation of India. They've got 1,384,000 people, and they still have fewer cases than us, and they added fewer new cases yesterday. So they are not on track to catch us fully yet, even though they've got 4 times the population. So that should be an indication to you of how poor a job we are doing as a country dealing with this virus. We are literally the worst in the world, which is terrible. Brenda Erickson's here. Brenda, we've got to ask you a favor. Please share us right now. And you know, if you do a watch party, under the share option, you can say do a watch party, and that invites your friends to watch right now with you, and you get to chat with them. It's pretty fun. But it's also fun to chat here. Next number we need to look at. And this is more bad news for the state of Texas, because Texas is seriously adding cases. And notice again, look over to the right, you see the population. Texas is less than 30 million. California is just less than 40 million, but Texas is adding more cases. They are within, I don't know, a week, it looks like, of becoming number one in total cases, number one in new cases. Total deaths, number one is going to remain New York. Hopefully, honestly, we get control of this before then. but Texas is well on its way to being top in the country currently at this time, and Florida is not terribly far behind them, but which is even fewer people. They're just a little bit over 20 million people. So this virus is not going away. The virus is still in control. Jim Porter says that in Ephraim McDowell's COVID rooms, they have 17 COVID rooms. They're nearing capacity in the hospital in Danville. So we are in the middle of a real huge upswing, and very often the numbers are behind that. Chris Pritchard's here. I know Chris is going to share. Okay, let's carry on. This is a grim reality. The chart you're looking at here is from Johns Hopkins. I got it by way of Naked Capitalism. And you see that we are well into the third wave of a first wave that never really ended. I mean, it seems unrealistic to call this a third wave when the first wave never really got away. We never got down to 0 new cases a day, or very few. Mary Daniel is here, and she says it's getting bad in my community. A man dead, and his wife is on a ventilator. This is a very, very serious disease, folks. I saw recently, I haven't shared the information with you, but hopefully it doesn't affect many, many people, but it's one of those that scared the daylights out of me, which is permanent hearing loss that happens all of a sudden for certain COVID sufferers. So we really want to do our best not to get this disease. Just do the right thing. Wear the mask, wash your hands, avoid close contact with people, especially when you're indoors. So carry on and take care of things. Now, there's another critical piece of this that we have talked about before, and that is the idea that we have more excess deaths this year than we expected. And according to the Washington Post, they're saying that the pandemic has caused nearly 300,000 more deaths than we expected in a typical year. Now, remember, our yearly total is 225,000, but just the other day we heard that they expected something, that they have found something like 75,000 additional deaths that were not expected and were not necessarily attributed to COVID. But where did these deaths come from? December through March is bound to be rough, according to Mary Richardson. Let's hope we are very, very careful. Families that are careful are going to do better. And it's one thing if you're President Trump and you catch this virus and you've got the best medical care on earth. You notice that Chris Christie almost died. I think, he was in the ICU for 7 days, certainly not what President Trump went through. And that should tell you the drop-off in care right there, that the President of the United States gets great care, and Chris Christie, who's a former governor of the state of New Jersey, did not get that same level of care. How do you suppose you will do if you get sick? So let's move on. There were some letters from this article in the Washington Post. Let's have a look at it. I'm sure President Trump thinks that 285,404 excess deaths is no big deal, just like having COVID is no big deal. However, I'm sure it's a big deal to the families of the people who have died and the dead. And someone replies, it is what it is. Very difficult. Jenikin says, what will Biden's first action against COVID be? I'm really not sure what if we are fortunate enough to elect President Biden. While we say this, folks, do not rest on your laurels. Don't let anyone else be responsible for electing Joe Biden. You need to be sure you vote. You need to be sure you get your family to vote. You need to be sure you get your friends to vote. This is very, very important. The early voting apparently in Florida is just off the charts, completely unexpected or unprecedented, biggest turnout in years. My expectation is that, we talk about going Godzilla, right? Virus. Which it's kind of a, Lisa's here, she's on a work conference call. Lisa, be careful what you're doing while you're on your work conference call. But you can share. Jenikin has voted. Excellent. And by the way, Jenikin, I'm worried that I'm mispronouncing your name. So you're going to have to send me a phonetic at some point. Nicola Manson says, vote for Hank, people from Kentucky, people from America. Thanks, Nicola. Billy McNichol says, roar. Yeah, I love it. Well, here's what I would do if I were President Biden. I would probably look for us to do a brief but strict, sharp shutdown of at least 2 weeks, closing, in 2 weeks, we should see some massive changes because the gestation of the virus is 2 weeks. And then add another 2 weeks, we should be able to tamp it down. And once we got it in control that way, then we could start to do contact tracing. But the virus is too far out of control right now for contact tracing to be valuable, is one of the stories I've seen recently. So we will need to do some sort of short but steep shutdown of the country, pay everybody to stay home. They're just doing this right now in Ireland, 6 weeks of shutdown. I'm sure they're paying their people to stay home. 6 weeks, Jen Quinn. Okay, I got it. Okay, good. 6 weeks should do it if people follow, if they will do the job. So that's what I think President Biden will and should do. And once you get it in manageable things, then you can respond quickly to areas that bloom up all of a sudden and go and shut them, just little areas down. And perhaps we need to focus on the people who are most likely to get sick. And I have people in my family that are very likely, if they get sick, it's not going to be a good thing. So that's what I would do. All right, let's move on. Next thing I want us to look at is this story. And that is the idea that President Trump calls Dr. Fauci a disaster and says Americans are tired of virus warnings from these idiots. President Trump attacked Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the nation's leading infectious disease specialist, as a disaster on Monday and said, despite experts' warnings, that the nation was headed toward another peak in the coronavirus outbreak, that people were tired of hearing about the virus and wanted to be left alone. I'm going to stop right there for a second. We are all tired of this virus, no question. And we're tired of hearing about it, but we're really tired of there not being a national plan, of there really is no plan to work on this. And we keep hearing, various trial balloons get floated out there, herd mentality, I think was the way the president said it. He means herd immunity, but that's just a hard way to go. That's asking Mother Nature to do the work for us, and it means millions of us would have to die. Anyway. The president issued his first broadsides against Dr. Fauci on Monday morning during a call with campaign staff that reporters listened in on, but then amplified them on Twitter and in remarks to reporters after landing in Arizona for a pair of rallies. Hope you guys, if you're going to a rally, hope you're wearing a mask. Jenikin says she is even more tired of number 45. I know what she's saying. President Trump also called Dr. Fauci a nice guy, but he said he's been there for 500 years and then added every time he goes on television, there's always a bomb, but it's a bigger bomb if you fire him. The guy's a disaster. This attack on Dr. Fauci comes as the United States has seen more coronavirus cases, over 8 million, and more deaths, nearly 220,000, actually, as we talked about earlier, closing in on 300,000, than any other nation in the world. This is a failure, my editorial comment. The president's advisors have tried to get him to lay off the infectious disease specialist who remains popular. Dr. Fauci was recently on an interview in 60 Minutes that aired on Sunday, dismissed the president's claim that the end of the pandemic was just around the corner. Fauci said during the interview that he was not surprised that President Trump contracted the virus, citing the failure to take basic precautions at the White House and at White House events, including the announcement last month of Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court, a super spreader event. Just incredible. You all are having a nice conversation there. I'm afraid to repeat some of it. Dr. Fauci said, I'm worried he was going to get sick when I saw him in a completely precarious situation of crowded, no separation between people, and almost nobody wearing a mask. And when I saw that on TV, he said, oh my goodness, nothing good can come of that. That's got to be a problem. And sure enough, it turned out to be a super spreader event. That's Dr. Fauci's words. Asked why he didn't fire Dr. Fauci, Mr. Trump said he's been there about 350 years this time. He said, I don't want to hurt him. Okay. Interestingly, a Republican senator responded. Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, very conservative. He's become the latest Republican to distance himself from the president. Quote, Dr. Fauci is one of our country's most distinguished public servants, said Mr. Alexander, who's retiring this year. That explains why he's speaking out right there. Right there. He served 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. If more Americans had paid attention to his advice, we'd have fewer cases of COVID-19, and it would be safer to go back to school and back to work and to go out to eat. That's certainly true. That is certainly true. I haven't seen the 60 Minutes interview, but looks like it is worth getting a look at. Well, let's talk about some encouraging news. We are facing all sorts of problems that, because our nation is so divided, we're not able to deal with. And one of them is dealing with the damage we've done to the climate, that human beings have done to the climate. I think the number of tons of fossil fuels that have been burned is something like 16 trillion tons, and most of it in the last 30, 40 years. It's over the last 200, but most of it in the last 30, 40 years. And if you don't think that would make a difference to the environment, let's go outside with a gallon of gas, and I'll pour that out in the ground and light it, and why don't you stand in it and tell me that you don't feel anything. Pretty sure that 16 trillion tons, that's just unfathomable. Anyway, so let's look at this story. Solar power could be the new king as global electricity demand grows, and this is from CNN Business. Renewable energy led by solar power could make up to 80% of the growth in electricity generation over the next decade. This is a great thing. The International Energy Agency said it's now consistently cheaper to generate electricity by capturing the sun's energy than by burning coal or natural gas. And bear in mind that the hidden costs of gas and coal and oil are, we're only relatively aware of, things like pollution of streams and rivers and lakes here in Kentucky, and pollution of the ground, pollution of the air. There are some pollution issues with solar, of course, and we use rare minerals that's going to be a problem going forward. But do you remember we talked about this a while back? I want to say maybe 2-3 months ago, we had a story about farmers in Africa who need to pump water, and they have switched from using diesel to using solar panels. And that if they can get the money for the solar panel, which is a bit of money, I remember it being something like $2,500, a significant amount of money. But once they do that, guess what? They don't have to pay for their power anymore. And using diesel power in Africa, what they were finding was the engines were always breaking down. It's dirty power. They were constantly having trouble keeping the engines rolling. So this is a much more reliable thing. Anyway, back to that story. Solar photovoltaic cells. Say that 5 times fast. Solar photovoltaic cells. Wow. Are now one of the cheapest sources of electricity in history, thanks to maturing technologies and policies that have reduced the cost of investments. Photovoltaic systems can be installed as panels on homes or businesses, and also deployed at solar parks. That's something I would love to see here in Kentucky, is that we would take maybe the top of a mountain that has been, completely the mountain's been taken apart to be able to get to coal. That would be something to put a solar farm up there. Roy is here. Roy Fraser is here, all the way from the United Kingdom. Roy, do us a favor and share. Hey, you never know. You never know. Your prime minister might call me for advice. That would be fun. So they're talking about 3 scenarios for future development. While fossil fuels face a precarious future, the prospects for renewable sources range from strong to spectacular. And this is why I'm always on about getting Kentucky involved in renewable energy, and sooner than later. We have all these workers who work in coal. They're energy workers. Let's put them to work doing solar. Jenikin says, wasn't the White House once solar powered? Absolutely true. President Carter put solar panels up on the White House during the 70s. And unfortunately, when President Reagan came in, he took them down. Now, I'm not sure if they were true photovoltaic. I think what they might have been was the very early kind of solar power was to heat water on your roof. You'd put a panel up there that was like a radiator almost, and it would sit in the sun and heat water, and that would be a hot water heater. And those were fairly common in the 70s and 80s, but I'm not sure they did that in the 70s. The photovoltaic was on the White House before. Well, let's see. It's a cost-effective choice, even in a scenario where the pandemic drags on. So we're going to have to move more and more to solar. We know this. Anyway, we could talk further and further about that, but I think you get the idea that it makes complete sense for us to move towards solar energy. And, you know, in Kentucky, you are a little bit discouraged from, you're discouraged from doing solar energy here in Kentucky, because it used to be, in Kentucky, it used to be if you got solar panels on your house and you'd connect to the grid, during the day, you would be making more power than you needed, and you'd send it into the grid. And if the power was worth $1, the energy corporation that you were, you know, the grid you were connected to would pay you close to $1. They'd pay you a high price for it. But they changed that. Now, for new people, you get a very, very small fraction. And this discourages people, even though installed solar in homes is less than 1% in Kentucky. And that's nuts. We should be encouraging solar as much as possible. Lisa Castle is here. I'm here just a little quiet. Hi, Hank. I'm here just a little quiet. Okay. Well, Lisa, don't be quiet, but do us a favor and share. And happy birthday, Mary. 27, right? I also like to end with kind of some good stories. Oh, let me show you some more pictures here of this story. Let's see. Yeah, there's a solar farm off the coast of England, it looks like. And offshore farms, by the way, can generate a lot more power than onshore solar farms. And one of the advantages is they can build the generators, they can build these turbines, these wind turbines, much larger, and therefore they move slower. So they're probably less of a danger to birds, but maybe I'm being hopeful. Tell us a story. Who do you want to hear a story from, Jenikin? I haven't got any stories. I've got a million stories. All right, so I thought I would share this with you because it's not exactly lighthearted, but Pat Robertson is prophesying that President Trump will win the re-election and then that the end times would begin. I do not understand why people want the end times to begin, and I also don't understand why we think we should influence, why we have any influence over the end times. And if we do have, Jenikin wants a story. I'm going to think about a story. Anyway, so Pat Robertson has said the end times will begin after President Trump is reelected. I personally am hoping President Trump is not reelected. And let's see what it says. Televangelist Pat Robertson reported on the 700 Club today that he'd been told by God that President Donald Trump will be reelected and his reelection will bring about the start of the end times. He said that without question, Trump is going to win the election, but it will result in a widespread civil unrest during which there will be at least 2 attempts to assassinate him. While America is engulfed in chaos, Robertson predicts that the Islamic nations will use it as an opportunity to attack Israel, but will be wiped out by God, leading to a remarkable time of peace. Following several years of peace and global revival, the world will then experience the end times and the Great Tribulation when an asteroid strikes the Earth. That's awfully specific. That is awfully specific. But, you know, the concept of an asteroid striking the Earth is interesting, and it reminded me, you know, I think someone else talked about that. Look at this. Neil deGrasse Tyson warns asteroid could hit Earth the day before the election, November 2nd. We like Neil deGrasse Tyson. We believe him. He says there's going to be an asteroid. My goodness. He shared information about the asteroid headed to Earth on Instagram. NASA says Asteroid 2018 VPI poses no actual threat to Earth. Still, many are intrigued about this. Larry says, why give Robertson any oxygen? Yeah, you're right. I apologize. I just thought it was something. You know, I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh when I would go through a period of not being sure what I believed. All it would take would be about 10 minutes of listening to Rush Limbaugh, and that clarified things for me. I knew exactly what I thought after listening to 10 minutes of him. So maybe that's why, Larry. Well, a music story. I've got a music story. I'll tell you a couple of quick music stories about interactions that I had with Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. And these are completely off the cuff. I had some friends who were playing in Venice Beach on Halloween. And I showed up and they invited me to sit in and play. And it was a little bar right at the end of Venice Boulevard, right at the ocean. So it was a funky beach bar. And, you know, when I sit in, I usually play kind of old rock and roll stuff. And I think I played It's All Over Now, that the Rolling Stones did a cover of. Because I used to love her, but it's all over now. And then I played a Beatles song. Ken Haberman's here. Ken, you know to share. I missed the button. Anyway, so then I also played a cover of the Beatles cover of Slow Down, which I think, isn't that, who wrote Slow Down? Larry, can't remember Larry's name, but he wrote Slow Down. And I want to say that one of my other heroes, Carl Perkins, did the first version of Slow Down, I think, that I was aware of. Well, the Beatles did. So as I'm playing Slow Down, some guy walks up to me, and I'm on a stage that's about, you know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet maybe, foot up off of the general area. And people were just kind of wandering over. And a guy comes up in a trench coat and a beard and sunglasses. Looks kind of like the Dude. I thought that his costume was the Dude. This was in the 90s. And stares at me. He's a very tall gentleman, so he was almost up to, and he got 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from me and just stared right at me while I performed. Larry Williams, Jenica Ray has it, Larry Williams. And I looked at him and realized it was Brian Wilson. And Brian Wilson was out and about and just stared at me, and wow. That was a really cool thing. Well, then another time, Pam and I belong to a group called NARAS, which is the group that gives out the Grammys. And to become a member of NARAS, you have to do some work. You have to do some work on a record that gets released. That's all you have to do. So if you are on a record that gets released, you can become a member of NARAS. And if you cough up $100 a year. So NARAS had a luncheon, and they were going to honor Kenny Loggins and Smokey Robinson. And so it was expensive. Billy McNichol says, so I performed in front of a beach boy on the beach. Yes, it was. It was awesome. Brian Wilson's been to my house. I can tell you that story too in a bit. He came to record at my house. Anyway, back to the NARAS luncheon. And I think we paid a bunch of money this was when we were really poor, so we couldn't afford it, but we went to this NARAS luncheon. And they had kind of a, not a cocktail thing, but just a gathering before you went into the room to sit down at the table and hang out and be part of the luncheon. So I had my Coke or whatever it was, and I was talking to my wife, Pam. I was facing her, and someone came up behind me and started giving my heel a flat with their shoe. You know how when someone comes up behind you and uses their foot to like step on your heel? And it did it several times. And I said to Pam, someone's stepping on my heel. Who is it? And she goes, it's Brian Wilson. I said, what? And I turned around and said, hi. And he went, oh. He got terrified and ran lickety-split off to the bathroom. He thought I was someone else. So that's the only time I got to get involved with him then. Then another time, the final Brian Wilson story. I've got a few more, but I was doing a CD project for Jeff Foskett, and Jeff had been in the Beach Boys, and he was doing a solo record, and he invited Brian to come over and sing. So Brian came to the house, and again in kind of a trench coat, sunglasses, Wayfarer sunglasses, classic. And I answered the door, and Brian I said, "Oh, hi, Brian, come on in." And he literally pushed past me, like didn't say hello. And he tromped through the living room, and I had a microphone set up and a headphone box that was a homemade headphone box, and he stepped on that. I thought, oh no, he's going to break it. But he went into the room where the control room was and found the biggest chair and plopped down in it and just kind of sat there. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be hard. But I was all ready to record, and Jeff came in and said, "Hey, Brian, how's it going?" And Brian says, "Oh, hi, Jeff." And Jeff says, "Did you meet Hank?" "Yep." Said hello. Like, still not kind of really cooperating. And Jeff says, "Brian, you ready to sing?" "Yeah." "What are we doing today?" And Jeff tells him, "We're going to do such and such a song, and I was thinking you could sing the bridge melody." "Oh, yeah, I remember that." And then suddenly he turns it. I mean, it just smoothed out completely. He goes, "Oh, is that the microphone we're using? Great. You got some headphones? Great. Give me 2 bars. Let's go." So then next thing I know, I'm recording Brian Wilson, and he said, "Mult." And that meant give me another track because he wanted to double it. "Mult, mult." He wanted to triple it. So he sang multiple times. He came in, and as I'm putting it together and working at the computer, he comes in, "Do you mind if I look over your shoulder?" And, "No, I don't mind at all. It was great." So from then on, Brian was totally cool, and we listened to it till we were happy with it. He sang as much as he wanted to sing. And I said, "Brian, do you mind if we take a picture out the backyard?" "No problem." And I can't find the picture. I don't know where it is. Maybe someday I'll find it. But anyway, Brian hung out, and then we said goodbye, and that was that. And it was perfectly wonderful. So I have a few other Brian stories, but that's one of the best ones. Oh, while Brian was singing, my kids came in from school because the school was 5 doors away. They opened the front door and came in. And I think my son would have been 6 or 7, and Lucy, my daughter, would have been 11. So they came in and said, and they looked, and there's Brian Wilson singing, and they went, "Oh, Dad's working. We can't watch TV," because the microphone was in the living room, and they left. The funny thing was, they already knew the Beach Boys music. They already knew and loved the Beach Boys music. After Brian left, I said, "Did you know who that was?" They were a little surprised, I think. Anyway, well, that's it. That's the good story for today. And thank you all for being here. As we say every day, just because you're getting angry doesn't give you the right to act like a damn fool. Use your anger to focus and do something good, okay? Get out there to vote. Get involved with your local party. Show up at a meeting. Get involved. Be part of the solution. Government gets a lot better the more of us get involved. All right, I love you all. I will see you tomorrow. Take care.